Welcome to Funpale Podcast, where we are unpacking opinions and changing destinations. I am your host, Shirley Altador, where each week we will chat about how to rise strong out of all types of obstacles that come with relationships. Through personal life experiences and discussions ranging from infidelity, trust, forgiveness, sex, heartbreak, self-love, and so much more. I am passionate and obsessed to provide guidance to every woman to create a better life. Let's dive in, pull up a seat, make sure you're cozy, and get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn. With me, your virtual girlfriend. Welcome back to another episode of Funpale Podcast, and today we have a special guest with us today. For story time, we have Kelly. Kelly is a life and business coach, two-time international best-selling author, and podcast host of the Love Yourself Fiercely podcast. Kelly's mission is to help women reclaim their inner power to create a life and business filled with desire. Kelly has gone from a 25-year-old single mother who lost her job to a successful, multi-passionate entrepreneur, soon to be married to the love of her life, mother of two incredible children, building her dream life. Kelly, welcome. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Wonderful. So you're going to start off with your story and tell people who you are, what you do, and give us a little flashback of your life.
Well, I think that I always have to start my story at that pivotal 25-year-old single mother and how that all came to be. You know, I had this beautiful vision of what my life was going to look like, and the white picket fence and the happily married, mom. I always dreamed of being a younger mom. And I had that. I was on track for that. I was engaged to be married. I was so excited to welcome my first child. And then what felt like the blink of an eye ended it all. And I found myself on my own. And it's important to note here that I was a military spouse. And so I had given up my whole life to be with her father. And I was left with no job, no house, no car, and 6 hours away from my family and friends with a brand new baby. And as we can all imagine, that was a little bit of a trying time in my life. And I felt unloved, unwanted, unworthy. And I really didn't know where I was going to go from there or what I was going to do. And so I packed up my baby and I packed up myself, and I went home. I went home to my mom and just survived for quite a while. I finished college, I got a job, and I started to rebuild. But I didn't take care of my emotional needs. I really just survived. That's what we were doing. We were getting through the days, we were getting through the nights, and we were just trying to make it. And on the inside, I was really, really hurt and really sad. And I did not know how I was going to navigate raising a child with somebody who hurt me so deeply, while trying to understand his perspective of our breakdown. And so when my daughter was about 10 months old, I decided that it was time for me to really get my ish together and stop feeling so sad. I was sad all the time. And I was angry. My default response to my sadness and my pain was anger. Anger towards him, anger towards needing to rebuild my life. And then I had this really pivotal moment when I looked at my tiny baby girl and I thought, I can't consciously raise another generation of women to put this much of her worthiness in the hands of another person. And that moment still gives me chills to this day because it feels like it's happening in real time. Changed everything. It changed everything. It awakened me to my demons, really. It awakened me to take a good look at myself and the choices I had made up until that point and make a decision to change. And I started I started just listening to what was happening inside of my head and inside of my heart. And I had a realization that I was quite awful to myself. I didn't say nice things. I didn't treat myself well. And in turn, I had spent the last now 26 years allowing other people to treat me that way. And I would mold myself into versions of what I thought other people wanted me to be, so that I became likable and lovable and enough to fit in. And then I was like, well, shit, I'm at rock bottom here and I don't know who I am and I have never known who I am. And what do I do now? And then I made a really big decision. And I said to myself, if I don't know who I am and I don't know what I want, then I get to decide who I am in this world. And I get to decide what kind of mother I'm going to be, what kind of woman I'm going to be, what kind of co-parent I'm going to be. I get to choose that now. And that's exactly what I did. I started to change the way I spoke to myself. I started to treat myself with kindness and compassion as I navigated my emotions. I started to allow myself to dream of possibility, which I don't believe I had ever done in all of my life. And I decided that her father was going to be her father for the remainder of her life and the remainder of my life. And therefore, if my goal was to start treating myself with love and respect and others with love and respect, then I also was going to treat him with love and respect. And I was going to do that because I wanted her to have two loving parents who put her first. I was raised in a divorced home as well, and my parents were lethal to each other all of our lives. And I really didn't want that. And so that was the decision that I made, and my life started to change. I started to see the internal world change. I felt calmer. I felt stronger. I felt more important than I ever had in my life. And that was because I was giving that to myself. I was important. I mattered. And who I was as a woman directly impacted who my daughter would be. And so it became incredibly important to me to go on this mission of self-discovery, of healing, and create this woman that really just made her immediate life a better place. And in turn, the world around her a better place. And that slowly but surely began to occur. And I started to share what I was learning about who I was and the things that I was carrying and had carried through my life, and the strategies that I was adapting that were really shifting my reality. I started to share that on social media because I knew that I couldn't be the only woman who felt that way. I knew that. And it's really important to note here that I had no idea that the coaching industry existed. So this was just me adamant that I was going to change one woman's life. That was really my mission at the time. Is if I could help one woman know that she didn't have to live her life at the hands of other people's decisions or at the hands of other people's beliefs about her, and that being a single mom wasn't a sentence to be less than, then I really had fulfilled my mission. And it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. And I built this beautiful community of women all over that were just starting to love themselves and starting to make sure that they were on their priority list. And then I became an author. I wrote in a personal development series, which was an exceptional part of my story. It was such a beautiful time. And it really allowed me to open my eyes to what it meant to be a female entrepreneur in that space and the impact that we could really have. And then I realized that I could be paid for what I had done for 3 years for free. And that really is when my business became a business, and I started to create a lot of opportunity for women to work closely with me and go through the healing process and build their self-esteem and make their self-love a priority while they navigated life. Life as a woman, life as a partner, life as a mother, life as a business owner. And, from there, it just grew and grew and grew. And now, I have my own podcast. I'm always running in my business, building new programs and new opportunities for women to step into their power. And the truth is, my entire life has changed. The way I communicate with the people that I love, the way I parent, the way I communicate with myself, the healing journey that I've had with my parents, with my ex-husband or ex-fiance, my current husband, and the relationship that we share, the co-parenting relationship that we all share. Everything has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, everyone in my life jumped on the bandwagon of let's be better. But the truth is that I was the beacon for all of it. And my decisions daily to show up in a way that treated other human beings and myself with love and respect was really just the way that this all happened for me.
That is awesome. So I'm going to be dissecting that story in so many pieces. Are you ready? To
I'm so
also,
ready.
help our listeners understand the different pieces of your life. So how many children do you have?
I now have two.
Two children, and one is by your first, which is your ex-husband, fiance?
Ex-fiance. I call him my husband because it's easier because we cohabitated. But yes, my ex-fiance. And one
Ex-fiance.
is with my current hubby to
Gotcha.
be.
Now let's take it back to your childhood. Um, was it just the divorce that affected you, or was it a good household, bad household, mediocre? Parents argued all the time. How was that like?
Tumultuous. It was a tumultuous upbringing. Um, Both of my parents have significant trauma from their childhood,
Hmm.
which I did not know as a child, obviously. But what I knew is that the two people who were supposed to love me the most hated each other. And it very much felt like we had to hate one parent in order to love another. And as I grew, um, I really was always full of curiosity. I asked a lot of questions. I asked a lot of hard questions, and it triggered the shit out of my parents. I would really push the boundary on like, why don't you ever listen to me? Why doesn't daddy get to come to our Christmas concert too? Why? I asked a lot of questions, and it really created a toxic environment. My mother couldn't handle her emotions, and my father has never been emotionally stable. Now, my father remarried when I was 3, and my father and my stepfather or stepmother, sorry, have 2 children of their own. And so that is a really pivotal piece of my story as well. My sister was born, my half sister was born when I was 7. And up until that point, I was the baby. And my stepmom adored us. And then she had her own children, and we became incredibly disposable. And that was a significant pattern that was all of our lives, still continues to be a very clear division in our life. But so that really was a difficult time in my life. My mom and my brother got along really well. My mom and me did not. And then I had this other house where I was important until I wasn't. And so I really felt unlovable and unwanted from the time I was 7.
Interesting.
And
You said, I'm sorry, honey. You said you had to
that's
love
okay. I was
one
going to say,
to get along with the other. And
mm-hmm,
I do believe it's like that in a lot of households. In my own household growing up, I feel like felt I had to be mean to one parent so I can get along with the other parent, and vice versa. But it
mm-hmm.
gravitated more towards the one parent, where it seems like my mom always wanted me to be upset with my father, but my father was just more mediocre about the situation. He didn't like, honey, you do whatever you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally understand.
Yeah. And what a difficult way for children to grow up, because the truth is we were babies, and the truth is both of our parents weren't that great. But we loved them both so much because that's what kids do. They love
Hmm.
their parents in their faults, in their toxicity, in their greatness. We love our parents. So to believe that in order to love, be loved and love one, we have to dislike and be mean to the other is, first of all, tiny brains can't We cannot justify that or make sense of that. And so it's all energetic. It's all a feeling, and it's really, really difficult to navigate as a kid.
You're right. It is difficult to navigate as a kid. I will tell you, there are times where I wish I had the heart of a child, because a
Mhm.
child is immediately and easily able to forgive because of their innocence. And, you and I are both mothers. And as you watch your kids grow up, I know there are times I've been harsh to my children. And when I say harsh, I'm not talking about abusive, but I hurt their feelings, but they're able to easily forgive. And then you
Mhm.
watch that individual grow up and grow up and grow up, and you realize that when they get older, it's not going to be that easy for them to forgive, because when you get older, forgiveness is necessary and it's important, but it's harder to forgive as you get older. You hold that sour little patch or sour little thing that they do to you. You hold it longer than you should. Where you yell at your kids in the morning, by the afternoon, it's like nothing ain't never happened.
Mhm.
Their little hearts are like, "Hey, mommy, hey, daddy, what's going on?" And you're like, I was mad at you this morning, right? That's okay. So I totally understand what you mean by kids don't know any better.
No.
They don't.
No.
So now, as time goes on, you're growing up. Did mom ever remarry?
No.
Mom did not
She was
remarry.
she was in a long-term relationship for about 13 years.
Oh.
However, I left home at 16. So I was only in the home for a few years of that relationship. And so him and I got along quite well. He, who we called our stepfather, treated me very well.
Mm-hmm.
And he treated my brother not so well. And so it's an interesting, when I look back on my life, I'm like, man, this is just a significant shit show all around.
Yeah.
But I was not in the home, right?
Uh-huh.
And my brother, so we talk about how I emotionally internalized all of my pain growing up. What my brother did was suppress his emotions and protect my mother
Mm.
always. And so now my mother's in this other relationship, and because my mother can be emotionally unstable, that relationship was tumultuous as well, her
Mm-hmm.
relationship. So my brother was always on the defensive to protect my mother living in that home.
Mm.
And so I was different from them in that state. And so I got the brunt of he treats you one way and he treats us the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was, it was so interesting. I don't even, there's so many layers there.
There is. It's a lot. When the family is divided like that, it's a lot of personalities to have to deal with. Kind of same thing, like the best example I can come up with is going to work and dealing with the personalities at work. Once the parents start to go separate ways and they're bringing other human beings into your life, these are personalities that you have to deal with. And it's interesting you say that your stepmom adored you until she had her own.
Mm-hmm.
In the back of my mind, and she's the only one that can answer. And, me from a stepmother, speaking from a stepmother standpoint, we have three children. Two children we share together. One is, she has another mom, but okay. So before she was born, I didn't know I can love someone else's child as much as I love mine.
Mm-hmm.
Because as harsh as this may sound now with me saying it, the love is different. And when I say the love is different, I'm not saying it different as in two different bottles of shampoo. That's not what I'm trying to say. It You love your children extremely different than how you love anybody else on the face of this goddamn earth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just a fact for me. You still love other people, but the way you love your own children is different. Now, when this little girl came into our life, especially how it happened, I was surprised that I was even able to love her. And that just lets you know that love is huge and it
Mm-hmm.
conquers a lot even through hate and negative times and things that are going on, it overpowers a lot. I'm interested in knowing if your stepmom was just trying to, fit in, and did she really even care to begin with? Because how do you just at a snap of a finger now start being mean or not treating me the same because now you have this child?
So that's honestly a question I've asked my whole life. It's a question I've asked her a variety of times as I've grown, because they got together when I was 8 months old. She has been in my life since I was an infant. An infant. They
Oh,
got married when I was 3.
so she's known
She's been
you.
in my life all my life. She's known every part of my being, just like anybody, any other parent. Just like, I just think that how can you do that? How can you love what a child who you played a pivotal role in raising, right? She helped raise me. I was a tiny human. And then have such a clear emotional disconnect. I have struggled with this my whole life. I still struggle with it sometimes, because now I'm protecting my own children from that with her,
Mm,
right? Because my sisters are grown up now and they are getting married, and I know what comes next is babies, and I also know what comes from there.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I have questioned that my whole life. And I think that is why I was so adamant about the right person coming into mine and my daughter's life,
Mm-hmm.
because I wouldn't have that.
Mm-hmm. Because you know what you went through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And this woman is still presently in your life. She's a
Mm-hmm.
staple in the family. Do you
Mm-hmm.
have a good relationship with your sisters?
Yes.
Then that's good.
So I was older, right? I was 7 when my oldest sister was born, and 10 when the other was born. And I was a little girl who now had tiny little girls to play with. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I adored those girls. It's as if the 7-year-old me always knew it wasn't their fault. It wasn't their fault.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't responsible for treating me with love and respect. They were
Mm-hmm.
children.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always made a significant point to be an active role in their life and a safe place to turn to.
Mm-hmm.
I was 18 when my youngest sister was 8. I was 28 when they were 18. So I was the safe place when breakups happened, and they navigated teenagehood, and then they navigated firsts of everything, because it was so important to me that they knew that I loved them, and that the adults in our life and their shit was not a reflection of my love for my sisters. And now my youngest sister struggles with some mental health, and we are not nearly as close as we've been. But it's funny because my mom asked that the other day, like, does that still hurt that you're not close? And I said, absolutely, Mom. But at the end of the day, she's an adult, and she lived it through her perspective, and that's her mother. So
Mm-hmm.
she's protecting her mother. And
Mm-hmm.
I get that. And I love her. She knows that I love her. She knows that my door is always open to her. But her choices are hers. But my oldest sister and I are very close.
That's good. That's good. And that's good that you can logically respect it is what it is and you're not upset with her. The door is open. If she comes, I have no problem talking to her, trying to reconnect what we have, but pay attention too to boundaries, because even family can be toxic, and you know that.
Oh my goodness, my greatest boundaries are with my family, to be honest.
Yeah.
They're the source of my deepest pain.
Those are the people we set our first boundaries with. And a lot of times we don't set boundaries. Family will run amok on us, use us, abuse us because we don't set boundaries, because society, oh, that's your family. Blood is thicker than water. But toxic is toxic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Don't feed me that shit.
And it took me a long time to to put boundaries in because I so desperately wanted them to love me, right? And see me and be proud of me. And I desperately wanted that and needed that from them. And I didn't get it for a really long time. And so it's so funny how life works. I remember I was out for dinner. I was dating this guy and I was out for dinner with a couple that he was friends with. And I remember this woman, I just met her, said to me, at some point, you have to stop needing their approval.
Yeah.
And it was like this light bulb moment of you're right. You're right. And that was, I would have been probably around, I would say around 21. I started to really detach from needing that so badly and creating boundaries with my parents. And at this point, my stepmom and I mean, we're so civil that she might as well be a third cousin that I see once every 2 years. It's so uncomfortable. But we're just so we're just so civil. I respect your place in the family. You respect my place in the family. And we've both made conscious decisions as grown-ups not to cultivate this relationship. Yeah. So that is what it is. Yeah. But I started to put up boundaries around, the types of conversations I was willing to have with my parents and the type of input I was willing to allow them to have in my life. And obviously, that shifted once I had my daughter and I needed my mom. I needed her. I was so vulnerable. And it's funny because as I healed and grew and changed, she was able to see that in me and we were able to create a new way of communication. She was able to create a new way of communication where we could actually speak about the things that had happened over my childhood that were hurtful to both of us. And we were able to set, boundaries around what does this look like when things get hard. And even now, my mom is my greatest trigger and I am her greatest trigger. And now we're able to say, look, right today, in this moment, we cannot have this conversation. But let's come back to it when we're ready. But that is wildly different than it has ever been. My mom lives with us now. She lives in the in-law suite in our home, and she's such a huge part of my life. But I have to credit her to her growth in that too, right? She saw me shift and change. She saw me with a strong desire to be better and communicate better and forgive, I think was a huge piece of it. And have an understanding of where she came from and why she is the way that she is and have compassion. And so now we have a strong relationship. My dad and I, we try. He loves me so deeply and I love him so deeply, but we are wildly different people. And we see the world differently and we respond to the world differently. And so now it's mostly we just have fun when we're together.
Gotcha. Well, that's good. And that's good that you and your mother were able to have this healthy relationship. And, you said after you had your daughter, you needed her. And it seemed like very similar situation happened to me. Not needed, but my relationship with my mother and I changed after I had children. Still major boundaries. We're not close, but it changed for the sake of the grandkids. Now, it seems like you and your mom's relationship took a total 360, which is very good. And that's very good. Yeah. Now, the question I have for you is, where did you go at 16? You left and went where? You're 16. Where did you leave and go?
My mom and I could not communicate at all. It was very toxic. Lots of screaming, lots of, moments that were really close to physical altercations. And she said, you got to go. You got to go. Your dad's coming to get you. And you got to go stay with daddy. And my dad lived 4 hours away in a town I'd never known anyone. And that meant I had to live with my stepmother. So we can only imagine how quickly that took a turn at 16, where I had no desire to shut my mouth. And I was I felt at that time in my life, I felt very backed into a corner. So now I can label it as unwanted, unlovable, unworthy. At the
Mm-hmm.
time, it was like, you guys are awful to me
Mm-hmm.
and I can't handle this. And so I was very aggressive, very rebellious. I never followed a rule. I was like screaming for attention, for somebody to show me love and compassion, and nobody would, because I
Mm-hmm.
was acting like a jackass.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that now, but that is a child desperately screaming for love. And so my mom sent me to my dad's and said, "Look, it's really bad here, and we need space." And so I went there, and that lasted, you know, maybe a month and a half. I lived there, and then I left. I packed my stuff, and I left. And I basically couch surfed with my friends for 2 years. 2 years. And the funny thing about this, and sometimes I look back and I'm so damn proud of myself. I was so resilient, even in the worst parts of my life. So I was in, halfway through high school when I moved there, and it became my mission to finish high school,
Mm-hmm.
because there was a hot moment there that we didn't think that was going to occur, and that I was going to, just be out of control. And so I went to this high school in my dad's hometown, and the staff there could see me. They were like the first adults that could see me through it. And they did just about anything they could to help. And then I
Kelly, are you
graduated
okay?
high school. Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's like when you look back, you're like, man, people are good,
Oh, you're not the
right?
first to
People are
cry.
good.
I love to see the tears on my guests because it's just like
And
I
you,
know it gets
you
to
know what's
that
funny?
point.
I'm still connected to those people today.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Um, But I graduated high school top of my class,
Mm.
and it was a very proud moment. And then I came home, because now what? Now I'm a high school graduate who's still living on someone else's couch.
Mm-hmm.
So I came home to my mom, um, and we tried to work through our issues. We
Mm-hmm.
tried really hard, but she was not willing to take responsibility or um, change her communication style. And so I was like, this is just not going to work. And so I got my first place when I was 19. And so I've
Okay.
been on my own since I was 19.
Gotcha. You were working.
Yes.
So you
Yeah.
just saved up every little bit you had so you can get your own place. Got
Yeah.
it. Got it. Now, when did you meet the ex-fiance? You
Hmm.
have your own place. So, you were headed in the right direction, even through
Yeah.
all the stuff you were going through in your childhood life. You still managed to stay focused, finish high school, um, get a job, get your own
Hmm.
place. That is a lot for a 19-year-old. Typically, what
Yeah.
does the world tell us? You finish high school, you go to college, your parents take care of you until you get a decent paying job.
Hmm. Yeah. I worked 2 jobs to pay for that apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's funny because my mom and I always got along better when we didn't live under the same roof.
Mm-hmm.
So she could see me differently when we didn't live under the same roof. So I was on my own, and I was, really working to get my life together. And she offered to help me go to college. She said, "Look, you're really smart. I would love to see you try to attend college." And so she helped me go to college. So I was paying for an apartment, going to college, working 2 jobs, and that was a lot for a now 20-year-old. And then I met my daughter's father when we were 20. I was 20, he was 23, and he was a wonderful man. He was probably the first man that ever really loved and respected me. And I was like, this is it. This is my life. This is the one. And my whole family could see it, and his family could see it. And we were really good together. And he was training to deploy for Afghanistan when we met.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, well, the one thing I know for sure is how to navigate difficult situations. I can do this part. This part is second nature for me. And so I really supported him in his training. And then we spent as much time together as we could before he deployed. And then he deployed in 2009. And by that point, my family and I were relatively stable. And we were close, and they adored him, and they were really excited for the life that we were building together. And they could see that I was truly happy and that he treated me well. And his family and I became really, really close during the deployment, and me and his friends became really close during the deployment. We really just leaned on each other. And then he came home in the middle of deployment. We got engaged and pregnant in 3.5 weeks. It was a wild ride.
So that's how you conceived, little lady.
That's how we conceived. And then he left and went back. And so that last leg of his leave, we really started to create a plan of what our life was going to look like, because now we have a baby coming where we want to get married. And so that meant that I had to really finish up the college year that I was in, try and find us, a couple of options on where to live close to the base or on base, and navigate that. And so that's what we did. I finished up the year. He came home mid-November of 2010. And I left my life. And I moved to base. And, the truth is we were only in our house for, I would say, a month before I could really see the challenges that he was having.
Okay.
And I spoke to my mom about it. I was trying to communicate with him about it. But he really wasn't open to it. It was like there was nobody left inside.
Gotcha.
Non-emotional altogether. And that's not who he was as a person. And I wasn't naive enough to believe that it wouldn't change him. I knew that. He was a good man and he did a really difficult thing. But he wasn't willing to address it. And so my mom and I talked, and she said, look, you are really hormonal. You're growing a human. You're away from home. Maybe it's just really impacting you more than because outwardly he seemed fine. He could really mask what was going on for him in such a way that I knew him. I knew every part of him. And so I could see it as his partner, but a lot of people couldn't really see it. And so she thought maybe just me being away from home and pregnant away from my family and friends, I was really interpreting it more deeply than maybe it was occurring. So she said, I'll come up one weekend, your brother will come up the next weekend. We'll make sure you guys are surrounded by family as you navigate the last part of your pregnancy. And so they did. Like our house was like a freaking, every weekend there was family there, to make sure they were helping us get ready. And, so they could kind of evaluate where he was at and what I needed. And then she was born. And 6 weeks later, he looked at me and said, "Yeah, I don't think this is a good choice now." And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?"
So wait a minute. So Kelly, now you went from like working 2 jobs, you had your own place. I'm assuming once you found out you were pregnant, is that when you let the 2 jobs go? Got it. And you left your place and now you moved in with this individual. You guys got a home together, or whose name was the home in?
It was in his name.
It was in his name. So now you gave up any little independence that you had to go be with him. Got it. You're pregnant. I get it. Trying to start a family, looking at the positivity of life. Baby is born. 6 weeks later, he tells me this shit ain't gonna work.
Yeah. So matter of fact too. And I remember looking at him and saying, "I'm sorry, what?" And he was like, "Yeah, this all just feels like a lot." And I was like, "You don't fucking say, man." Like, My shit's not even healed yet. You're telling me it's a lot. I haven't slept in 6 weeks. What do you mean? And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, yeah, like just so numb.
Just like that.
It was so matter of fact. And he helped me pack our stuff and he drove us home.
What the fuck? He helped you
What
pack
the
your
fuck is
stuff
right?
and drove you home.
Mhm.
Like therapy
Mhm.
wasn't even an option. Let's discuss this.
So, and when I say the depths of my soul were rocked, that's why. Because I was like, could this maybe just be that like you're having a really difficult time and maybe we can try to talk to a counselor on base or, you know, whatever. And he was like, yeah, no, I don't know. And I was like, what the hell? And so I knew even then that this wasn't him talking, that there was a lot more going on. I was well aware that he was really struggling. But also, I am not the woman that's going to be like, let me cook and clean for you and raise your babies while you treat me like that.
Yeah.
There's going to be no, that's not, it's not happening. And so when he brought us home, you know, my mom had a really long conversation with him and she was like, look, you get the help that you need and I will make sure that Kelly and the baby are safe. Okay? I'm going to make sure, but you need to get the help that you need because this is probably not what you actually want. You need to get help. And I talked to his mom and I was like, you gotta help me. And nobody was like, he wasn't willing and they weren't willing to make him or any of that. And so I was like, well, shit, here we are. Okay, let's figure this out.
So now let's fast forward because baby is 6 weeks old. You're still like trying to keep your shit together after your ex-fiance is just like, this shit ain't gonna work out. You just gotta go somewhere else. Which is, it just sounds crazy to me because no, we need to talk about this. There's steps to this process. You can't just tell me I need to go somewhere. And can you imagine as a woman, oh my God, how that would make you feel and just crush every bit of strength that you had. You went from working 2 jobs, having your own place. Motherfucker, I moved in with you.
I literally sold my car, everything, to just figure it out. I had nothing, literally no things. I had no money, I had no job, I had no house, I had no car, and I had a hell of a lot of anger.
You know, and, you know, I'm all about, you know, there, 2 people can definitely make it work. But women, I tell women all the time, don't lose yourself in the relationship. No matter how much you're making, don't lose yourself in your relationship. Always have something to fall back on, man. And it's not like, there are people that like, no, you shouldn't do that. You know, that's not a good way of thinking. You're putting that into the universe. But protecting yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. Anybody who sees that as a negative, I feel like, no, you need to wake up. There's no negative in that. I even tell stay-at-home moms, look, if there's a budget that's set and this is what you have access to, don't be ashamed to put a little bit of savings of that on the side. I'm not saying you need to be this big bad bitch and act like you don't need your significant other, but you need to make sure if anything was to happen, you're okay.
And I'm living, breathing, walking proof of that.
Yeah.
And it was something. It was some kind of way. I'll tell you that. At the beginning, it was really, really, really hard.
So, you know, Kelly, I know you figured out a way to pick yourself back up because you're talking to us today and you're doing absolutely phenomenal. So now let's fast forward to the situation. You stay in your mom's house for a little bit. How does it come to be that you meet your husband now?
Well, there's a big, long piece of the puzzle that happened in the middle. And I stayed single for 6 years before I met my partner.
That's good.
And I was actually super intentional about that because my first thing was I needed to get my shit together and get myself well. And then my next order of business was navigating co-parenting. That was really, really important to me, given the way we've now dissected I grew up. And so I was not willing to have that. And it's important here to note his journey parallel to mine, not my current partners, but my ex-partners. So when this all happened, I wouldn't let him see our daughter. He was clearly unstable, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had said to him and to his family, you better figure your shit out before you have access to this baby that you just tossed out like garbage. Right. And so for the first few months of her life, he really stayed away. And then he was going away again on a training exercise. And I said, look, we need to address custody. We have to. I can't be in a position where I have to find you in the middle of a friggin' desert to make a decision about our kid. Mm-hmm. And that was really the first step to us making decisions for our child. And we went to the courthouse and we just said, look, we just need to come up with a basic agreement here that really protects his right as her father, my right as her mother, and her. That was what I wanted. And we had settled on, oh man, the lawyers were like, you don't want anything? And I was like, no, I want nothing from him. I want no alimony. I want no spousal support. I want nothing. I want him to pay for his child like he's legally required to. Mm-hmm. And I want sole custody. And at first he didn't like that. And I said, look, we will write it up in a way that you have unlimited access to your child with reasonable amount of notice, but I will not be held in a position where I can't make decisions about where we live, about what school she goes to, about medical care, because you're not here.
Got it. Makes sense.
So that's the agreement that we came up with. And in the agreement, he was to provide proof of therapy once a year. That was our agreement. I said, you got to get help, man. If you ever want to be an active role in your daughter's life, you got to get help. You got to figure your stuff out. And so he did. He really, really did. He worked hard for a long time with the military in civilian world. He ended up being diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury from his tour, as well as PTSD, complex PTSD. Mm. And so it took him 4 years to get those diagnoses and 2.5 more years to move closer to home. And so she was about 5 before he really had consistent access to her. Over the years, his family would take her quite often. So she goes to her dad's every other weekend. That's our agreement. So for many years, his mom and his sister would take her every other weekend so that they had a relationship. Because it was really important to me that that she knew that she was loved mm-hmm. from both sides of her family. Mm-hmm. And he got better and better and better and better and better. And I remember when she was about 4, I said, look, how you're not in another long-term relationship or how I'm not in another long-term relationship, it kind of blows my mind. But we're going to start to navigate that as our daughter gets older. So how do we want to do this? How do we want to create an environment where she feels loved and important everywhere? And so we created this pact, her father and I, that if we met somebody that was worthy of our child being actively involved in, then it was a family unit. Mm-hmm. And his new partners didn't have to love me, but they had to respect me as her mother, and they had to know that we did things as a family. And any partner that came into my life didn't have to love him, but they had to respect him as her father, and they needed to know that he would be there at all important events in her life as a family. And how we actually follow through on that is like mind blowing, because we talk about different personalities, right? And so then at that point, I was like, the person that comes into our world needs to be better than the man that I agreed to marry. The same or better. Talking about her father, because he was wonderful. He was a wonderful man, and he's a wonderful father. And so anybody who had to come into my life needed to treat her and I the same as that before he was unwell, or better. Mm-hmm. That was my standard. And let me tell you, navigating dating in your late 20s, early 30s as a single mom, there's not a whole lot of greatness knocking on your door. And so I was really very clear about the type of person I was going to allow into our world. And then I met my fiance. We played on a volleyball team together. And from the very first day, I was like, who is that? Who's that guy? And about 4 months after we started dating, my daughter's appendix ruptured. And we were in Emerge and then in the hospital for 10 days. And he never left our side. Ever. In 10 days. And I was like, well, shit, I guess I got to marry this one. Because he didn't have to do that.
Oh,
He
Kelly,
didn't have to be there
I
for
love
her
it.
or for me
This is my
or for
emotional
her dad.
Kelly.
Yeah.
I love it.
You're
I see
getting
the
me
tears.
on an
Yeah, I
emotional
see the
day.
tears, guys. You can't see them, but I can see them.
You can hear them, I'm sure. Yeah. And, you know, I remember that realization where I was like, this guy is something special. And I had learned a lot over the past 6 years. And so I was very clear about my boundaries within this relationship, about, you know, my desire to continue to be an independent woman, my desire to make sure that I had financial independence, and that we really cautiously navigated this relationship, because it wasn't just me, it was this little girl too.
Exactly.
And also I think my life exploded far too many times up until this point, and I really just could not put myself in a situation where I had to pick myself back up with nothing. I had learned my many lessons. We met when I was 31. So 31 years of like digging my way from rock bottom. There was no freaking way that I was ever going to put myself in that situation again. And by the time we met, I was an author and a coach, and I had two successful businesses at the time. And I was like, there's no way that I'm giving up this incredible life that I had built for us. And that's where he comes in, and he's been remarkable for the last 5 years. We have a child together, and he treats both of our children with the same love and respect.
That's good. You know, the good thing is, Kelly, through all this, you've learned to know who you are, what you're okay with, what you're not okay with, not being afraid to voice yourself. And it all started with the whole custody situation that you were going going through with your daughter's father. You knew what you wanted. You were willing to make modifications. You weren't just stiff as a rock, but you knew what you wanted, and you came forward with your demands. And women, many times, are always felt like bitches. You're aggressive. What is wrong with you? Because we know what we want. But men do not get the same negative response as women do. When men step up, when men take charge, it's attractive. When women do it, oh, she's fucking angry. She must be on her period. What's all this attitude for?
Yep.
Excuse me? Are you kidding me?
Know, right. But here's the thing. There's nothing that will bring that out in a woman more than protecting her children.
Oh, yeah.
And that's precisely what I did. And that was probably the first moment in my life. So I always was like a little aggressive and kind of obnoxious in the way that I delivered what I desired in life. But that was probably the first time where, first of all, there was nothing I was saying that was going to be changed. That's the way it was going to be. But I did it in a way that everybody felt supported in their needs. And, you know, and also he was never going to fight me on it. He couldn't. He didn't have a leg to stand on. He hadn't spent any time with his child. He was gone half the time for work. How are you going to create a safe environment and a stable environment? You are not. Exactly. You have not. And this child deserves stability. And so I was adamant that that's the way it was going to be. And the truth is, she's older now. He lives relatively close to us now. He's about 15 or 20 minutes away. And I give her a little bit of control around her desire to spend time with her dad. And throughout the pandemic, she's actually spent half her time with him, which as a mother rips my gut out, right? It's really challenging. But she'll never get that time again with her father.
Yeah.
She never had that time with him growing up. And real life's going to come back into play. He's going to go back to, not being available for her that much. And that'll be a special moment for her. So I've never withheld my child from him or his child from him ever. But I certainly was very clear about the type of environment that I expected her to be in. And he has stepped up every time.
And that's
every
good.
time.
That's good because the child needs at least one stable parent to be able to make healthy decisions because children don't know any better. And when both parents are off the rocker, it sucks for the child.
Yeah. And we just have always, and now when I say we, I mean her father, me, and my partner have always been there for her, all three of us. We've always created a family culture. There is no difference for her, right? Except that daddy lives in one house and we live in another. That's the only difference. Exactly. I remember one year I was working. I'm an entrepreneur, so sometimes I can't really get away. And she had a spring concert and the two of them went together for her.
Look at that. See, now.
And then we joked, everyone would be like, look, it's Rise 2 dads.
This is such healthy co-parenting, such a healthy blended family. And this is how it should be. We all know it's not like that all the time, but this is a healthy co-parenting and healthy blended family that they can at least both of them be there to support her because who's the main focus? She is, not them, not your partner.
Right.
She's the main focus. So if you both can be there, you need to put your feelings aside and be responsible about this and go support the child. And this is what you call healthy. Look, dude, you don't have to be my best fucking friend.
Right.
But we need to respect each other for the sake of our daughter.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're not best friends.
They don't need to be.
They're not. And they never will be. And the truth is, we are three different adults and we have different expectations in our homes. And so there are still many times we as the adults have differentiating opinions. And the one thing that we have always done is those conversations never happen in front of our daughter, ever.
Good.
It's like if we got something important to talk about, we either go out for coffee or dinner and talk about it as adults, or once the kids are in bed, we have a phone call between the three of us and make a decision about how we're going to navigate this conversation so that we are all on the same page. And I think part of it comes from my own tumultuous upbringing, right? I was like, I will not do this to my kid. I will not make her feel that in order to love me, she needs to hate him. There was no way. And, fortunately, he really just has a strong desire for all of us to give her a great life. And also my son, right? So now we have a toddler, a 3-year-old, who really is starting to understand when sister leaves and what that looks like. And I gotta give kudos to her dad. Her dad treats my son like part of the family.
Good. That's good.
Birthday presents, Christmas presents, they joke now. So he is the parent that takes her on these like extravagant vacations every year. And which whatever, I'm like, you do you. I don't even care. But now it's like when Lincoln is old enough, I'd love to take them both. And he would take them both.
And that's a good thing. And that's how it should be. But it's not
Right.
always that.
No.
It's not always like that all the time. So it is extreme breath of fresh air when adults are being responsible. It changes things.
Yep. And the truth is I attribute all of it to my decision to communicate better and more effectively. And the women that I work with that are navigating separation or divorce or co-parenting, this is what I always tell them. You cannot control anybody else. You can't. You can't make people be better. You can't make people do things your way. You can control how you respond. And if your if your ex is not willing to meet you in the middle, you still have control over how you respond, because at the end of the day, your children are going to grow up and they're going to form their own opinions. And if you responded in a way that treated the people that you're dealing with love and respect, your kids are going to know that.
Exactly. They will.
They're going to respect you for that. They're going to trust you deeper with their emotions for that. And over time, if you continue to respond in a loving and respectful way for another human being, just because they're a human being, you don't have to like them. You don't have to respect them really. You just have to respect them as your co-parenting partner. That's you created life with this person, and that never changes. So if you can take control over your emotional responses and how you respond to that relationship in regards to your children, you have the upper hand, in the sense that you can sleep at night for the way you treat people. You can sleep at night for the behavior you're modeling to your kids. People will jump on the bandwagon eventually, or you'll just create really strong boundaries so it doesn't get to you the same way.
Exactly. Now, before you provide us with the most motivational message before we leave for today, how does life look like now? And I'm assuming you definitely accredited everything that you went through to where you are now in your coaching business. You work full time as a coach.
Yes.
You don't do anything else. You are a full-time entrepreneur. And how long would you say you've been a full-time entrepreneur now?
I've been a full-time entrepreneur for 5.5 years.
Gotcha.
I did have another brick and mortar business up until the beginning of the pandemic. And then once we were forced closed, it was my, I knew it was time.
It was time.
It had been time. I had been wanting to coach full-time for years and years and years. But yeah, what does life look like now? I am a full-time coach. We just bought our dream home, this big, beautiful home where we all get to cohabitate together with my mama. And my relationships are remarkable. My relationships with my kids are remarkable. My relationship with myself is remarkable. My relationship with my partner is remarkable. My family, as much as it can be. When I look back on the last 10 years, if I look back on the last 35 years, let's be honest, I wouldn't be the woman that I am today. But the decisions that I chose over the last decade have really brought me to this moment, to be able to receive love in a way that's healthy, to be able to give love in a way that's healthy, to be able to support people on their path without judgment or resistance. That wasn't who I was. I was not a confident woman. I was not a strong woman. I was broken and defeated and sad, and I just needed somebody to love me. And what I learned through learning to love myself and finding myself and discovering myself is that I always had the answers. I always had what it took to get me to this place. I just needed to rise to my potential. I just needed to trust that no matter what the world had thrown at me, I was going to be okay. I was going to be okay. That every time I responded instead of reacted to the world, I grew more. I became stronger. I modeled better for my child and also many adults in my life, to be honest. And I have spent the last 10 years really diving deep into my own healing. Every time I think I'm done, there's more. There's deeper parts to heal, but I am beyond where I thought I would be. I was like, if I remember that moment when I walked back into my mom's house with that tiny little girl, and I was like, man, if we could just have a nice place to live in a safe neighborhood, and my kid could eat and, play soccer on the side, that would be the greatest life. I really had very small expectations for who I would be in this world. And I have far surpassed all of them. And now I am the biggest dreamer you will ever meet.
Awesome. That's such a blessing. Now, what motivational message do you have for our listeners?
I would say just what I just said. You have everything that you need to create a life you love inside of you. You have it. It's in you. It's just believing that it exists. It's just loving yourself in a way that you can rise with compassion, and self-trust and self-belief. And when you know that no matter what life hands you, you're gonna be okay because you've got your own back. You get to dream big, and you get to have it all. And you get to have it all in a way that feels in complete and utter alignment with who you are as a person. And when we're relating this to relationships, when you are your greatest relationship, you cultivate the most exceptional relationships. So I will leave your listeners with this. When you put your self-love at the forefront of who you are and everything that you do, your life remarkably improves. The people in your life improve, the situations and the opportunities that present themselves improve, and you're capable of anything because you believe in yourself.
You're right. Believing in yourself. And the old saying goes, you need to be mindful of also who you surround yourself with, because who you surround yourself with, all that energy is going to help manifest around you. I'm a big advocate in you're your number one supporter. You shouldn't have to rely on someone to pep you, to motivate you, to move, to get up through the day. You are your number one supporter. Self-love, self-worth, self-care starts with you.
Absolutely. When you become your own best friend, when you love yourself fiercely, which is my tagline always, your external world shifts to surround you with people who support that way of life, people who believe in greatness. And not because it just magically happens, but because you love yourself enough to create boundaries around the people who aren't supportive of your journey. And you are your greatest power source. You're your greatest relationship of your entire life.
Exactly.
And when you cultivate that and you spend time with yourself and you spend time in self-discovery, the only option is radical self-responsibility.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kelly, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. Very inspirational message you have for our listeners. And listeners, again, thank you for listening. And as I always leave, love yourself, voice yourself, and be yourself. To the next podcast, guys, have a great one. Thanks for tuning in to Femme Parler Podcast. If you want to continue the conversation or share your takeaways, I want to hear from you. Head on over to the website or join our Facebook community and comment your favorite part of the show or share your thoughts. I want to hear what you have to say. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Chat with you next week.